for law school. And then after graduation, came back to DC, worked in a private consulting firm, and actually sort of got an intro to the mental health side of the issue, working with the Sandy Hook Promise. I don't know if you remember the terrible Sandy Hook school shooting. The parents of that group sort of got together and said, let's try to do something positive out of this, and put together kind of a coalition of groups on the mental health piece. I can get into this in a bit, but this was over a decade ago, but kind of cut my teeth on the mental health side of issues, working with them for 3 years up on Capitol Hill on the private side. And then in 2017, came over to Hall Render and have been working a variety of different healthcare issues since then. So happy to be working with you guys, and I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that introduction, and sorry to cut you there. We always need to record these because it's on our member benefit, and it's something that the team and we have notes to say record, but we get caught up in the conversation. So sorry to do that in the middle of the introduction, but I wanted to make sure to get this recorded. So just real quick, I did want to highlight for our federal lobbyist team, if you could put your name and agency in your profile, that is helpful so that they know who they are speaking with. If you can have your video on, that is great. I know some of you are driving and some of you need to have eyes on the road and you're listening, which is fantastic. Also, make sure to have yourself muted. If you have questions, either raise your hand or use the chat function. I do want to try to be able to get those questions answered for everyone. And then as far as, the purpose of this call, our calls are usually to connect people to statewide leadership. But as we're on this journey of CCBHC, it's really important for us to be connected federally. And so the purpose of this call is to really connect you to this federal team, learn from them about the importance of the advocacy and the great work that they're doing. And then also the work that has already been done in the short time that we've already been with them. So Abby, speaking of that, how about you share a little bit about what we've done to get us to this point? And then I know John and Andrew have some things they want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Zoe. And I'm happy to share kind of the fruits of your crazy visit last week. A lot of lobbyist friends have laughed that we did the entire delegation in one day. So I think it goes to show just the prowess of the group that you brought to DC. So we did the entire Indiana delegation in one day. And our takeaway, we focused on getting the CCBHC demonstration approval. That was kind of our main goal. And I share this because I've been scheduling meetings for a long time, and I've never seen folks kind of fall over themselves to try to get in front of a group. So it was really great to see that staff and members both wanted to meet with this group and show their support for getting Indiana the CCBHC demonstration. I think mainly the biggest takeaway for this group is that we are going to do a delegation-wide letter of support, and that is already kind of off to the races to get that done. We just kind of need to go through, everyone needs to cross the T's and dot the I's in the offices, and we should have a finished product shortly, which I know Zoe and team are going to do some press on, and I'm sure the offices will want to do that as well, just to show that the delegation as a whole is really supportive of bringing this program and funding to the state. So that, and again, it was just a really exciting day, and the team that came to DC did a great job selling why Indiana is a great candidate for the program, and I think it got a lot of excitement from members and staff alike. In all the follow-ups I've done, everyone seemed like they were like, we gotta get this, we gotta win this demonstration approval. So we definitely generated the excitement that we needed to. And we look for that letter hopefully very shortly.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me, Abby, that Representative Houghton said was that this type of congressional support has not been seen since the Farm Aid bill. that quote has stuck with me. And so I thought that was kind of cool to pay forward to members. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Everyone was excited to meet with us, and it was kind of like a funny check all, right? That's like, wow, you guys are going to get everybody on this. That doesn't happen much in this delegation. So I think even the more troublesome members that typically don't like to show their support, were all in. So it was cool to also see bipartisan. You know, we had long meetings with both Republican and Democratic members. So it was just a really neat thing to see. And I think if anyone has any questions, I was going to pass it over to John to kind of give a kind of just some outlook on specific to Indiana and healthcare.
anyone have questions about the work we've done up until this point? All right, well, once we know about the demonstration, then we have already talked about next steps, because there's going to be a lot of things that happen at the end here, fast and furious, that we need to be keeping our eyes on. And so we'll be meeting with the federal lobbyist team to ensure that mental health is at a focus of those things getting to the finish line. So did want to let you know that work will continue after. So John, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Zoe. Good morning, everybody. Abby asked me to talk a little bit about what happened last week politically. I'm sure most of you all know we had a primary in Indiana last week, and it has shifted. All right, the makeup of the delegation, or it will come January. We're losing a number of members in the House, especially, right? So we're losing Greg Pence and Larry Bouchon, both of whom serve on the Health Subcommittee at Energy and Commerce. From a healthcare perspective, that is a significant loss for the state of Indiana. Larry especially we haven't always agreed with Larry on everything, but Larry's knowledge, and especially the knowledge of his staff when it comes to healthcare issues, is going to be severely, is going to be a significant loss for us. As a state, looking at what it's going to be like down the road as far as the delegation is concerned. I guess I start with the Senate. Obviously, Mike Braun won the governor's primary. I'll leave that to Kelly and others to talk about the impact on the state house. But Jim Banks won the primary, I believe, relatively unopposed. That's a whole nother conversation. That race was never really in doubt. Jim doesn't have the history of being the best on hospital or healthcare issues. Jim has a history of carrying a lot of legislation for what we refer to as the downtown think tank types in Washington. Jim has traditionally been very much out there on we should bring the free market to healthcare and it will solve all the problems, which we all know is completely not true. That said, Jim reached out to Brian Tabor and a number of us who work on healthcare issues from Indiana last summer, I think, at least last fall, and asked to meet with us and to talk about healthcare. So I will give Jim credit that he has been very open to discussing healthcare issues and has brought a very different approach than he has historically to healthcare matters. So we're going to continue to work with him going forward, and he's expected to win that race come this fall. Staying up north in terms of Banks's replacement, Marlon Stutzman was one of two former members of Congress to run again. The other one being John Hostetler down in Larry Bouchon's district. I think Marlon winning was a little bit of a surprise. I think he benefited from there being, as tends to happen in Indiana, especially in House primaries, a bunch of people in the primary. Marlon has significant name ID in that district because he is a former member from there. He was on the Financial Services Committee when he was in the House before, wasn't necessarily prolific on healthcare issues. He always gave time to us and has had really good staff. Those of you who have ever spent time at the State House may know a gentleman by the name of John Hammond. And John's son, John Hammond III, actually was Marlin's chief for a long time, chief of staff, and we worked a lot with John. And so we're hoping that Marlin is going to staff up again. We expect he will with good people. Jefferson Shreve won the primary for Greg Pence's seat. As most of you who live in the Indianapolis television market know, Jefferson is someone who ran as a moderate Republican for the Indy mayor's race, and then turned around and ran as a Trump-type conservative for the House. Which, you know, setting all that aside, it's what you have to do if you're going to do that. That's the nature of the 6th district. Not to get too inside baseball, but Greg Pence wanted that portion of Indianapolis in the southeast corner of Marion County drawn into his district so that he could say he represented Marion County for fundraising purposes. And so that's how Jefferson ended up being able to run for that seat. He had a 90% name ID from all the money that he spent on the mayor's race. But I think he really benefited from Mike Speedy, former state rep, and a gentleman by the name of Jameson Carter splitting the vote. I think both of them got an equal number of votes, and between the two of them would have had more votes than Jefferson. I've been told by people close to him that he ran for the House because he believes that he needs a position from which he can advance his policy ideas. I'm not really sure what he's expecting from the House of Representatives, being a freshman member, and what policy ideas he expects to advance, especially if Republicans lose the House this fall. But regardless, he's somebody who we are going to work with extensively going forward. And if he is interested in policy, then I think that's an opportunity for us to work with him on mental health issues. Victoria Sparks. I was a bit surprised by the margin by which he won that primary, given the amount of money that Chuck Goodrich and frankly Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House, spent to defeat her. Multiple mayors in that district and other elected officials came out against her publicly. I don't want to overstate this, but her office has been extremely difficult to work with for everyone from Indiana. As a lot of us in Washington do, there's an old rule that you kind of judge a congressional office by the way that the boss treats the staff. And she was voted the worst boss on Capitol Hill. And that's really saying something for a freshman member of Congress. She's been carrying all of Jim Banks's old bills. And so that kind of gives you an idea of where her head is on healthcare issues. We do know somebody, and again, some of you who have worked in the State House and spent time in the State House know Mike Delph, the former state senator. Mike has been working with her for a while. And so Mike and I worked on the Hill together back in the 1990s. And so I've known Mike for a long time. And so if I ever really need anything for Victoria, I'll call Mike, but that's not very often. And that has not always produced results, even given that relationship. So Victoria will be back. And I know that the folks at the Hospital Association are not really thrilled by that. But we'll continue to work with that office going forward. Congressman Mervan up in Northeast Indiana is going to have another very difficult race in the first. He's got a well-funded Republican opponent. And talking to my Democratic friends, one of the issues that they are really concerned about up there, just given the traditional blue-collar union nature of the first district, is what happens with the convention in Chicago this summer. If it ends up being as disruptive as it is expected to be, there's concern that the blowback from that will bleed over into the first district and could cost Frank votes, but we'll keep an eye on it. I still think that's one of his races to lose. Lastly, for Larry's seat down in Southwest Indiana and Western Indiana, Mark Messmer won that. For anybody who's worked at the State House with him, He's always been good on healthcare. Brian Tabor at the Hospital Association was very pleased to see that Messmer won that primary. He was backed by Larry Bouchon and actually defeated another former member of Congress, John Hosteller, as I mentioned, rather handily. So we're looking forward to working with him, and we'll be going straight to him next year on many healthcare issues. So that's a summary of the primary. Just lastly, a quick outlook for November. As far as Congress goes, it's going to be, I am hesitant to do forecasts and prognostications because I've been so wrong so many times. But just looking at it on paper, our guess is still that Republicans lose the House of Representatives. It's going to come down to how much of many of you have probably seen these latest poll numbers for the president, which are not good. If those hold up, it'll come down to a question of what kind of drag he ends up being on the down ballot races for Democrats. As far as the Senate is concerned, there's mathematically a situation where Republicans are defending 10 seats less than Democrats. There isn't a Republican seat that's up in the Senate this fall that Republicans had expected to lose. And if you were to give Republicans the West Virginia seat of Joe Manchin, that automatically puts it at 50-50. That means all they have to do is win one other seat, be it the seat from Ohio or John Tester in Montana or Nevada, just one of those, and they take the majority. That may end up being a bigger task than most are anticipating. John Tester in Montana and Sherrod Brown in Ohio are going to run very, very tough races. So that is no given that Republicans are going to win. But traditionally, that's the way it works. So, Abby, with that, that's a summary of where we are politically as far as the delegation is concerned, and happy to entertain any questions.
And I think now Andrew was going to give kind of more of a policy outlook for the end of the year for kind of what we're watching for. And then, as Zoe said, we're going to, definitely, we're going to get through the finish line of the demonstration and then kind of focus our attention to make sure we have good policies and outcomes towards the end of the year. So Andrew, if you could give a little.
Sure. Yeah. So we're in mid-May, and it's not only an election year, but a presidential election year. So that kind of cuts the calendar almost in half when you look at the legislative congressional calendar. They're going to say the next 2.5 months will be intense. That as far as activity in DC, legislative action. The House, for its credit, they've been stymied by a handful of Republican members that in effect have created this unusual situation where the House, if it wants to pass any sort of legislation, it has to do so in almost a supermajority way. So, in a way, I think there's a little bit of irony in that for years, Republicans were always so afraid of Democrats taking away the cloture vote, kind of the nuclear option in the Senate, and the Senate into the House, and now all of a sudden, the House has become the Senate. So it's interesting dynamic right now at play. That said, House Republicans are very much eager to do as much as they can to show that they're actually getting things done, or at least kind of create the illusion that they're getting things done. But it's been very active at sort of the committee level, Ways and Means, and the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which is where all the healthcare legislation comes out of, has really done their part as far as marking up legislation. And I think you see next week there's going to be a markup on telehealth legislation. They've been active on rural healthcare. And I think behavioral mental health, substance abuse type legislation is another area where they've been active, and they've done hearings, and you have bipartisan buy-in on both sides. So it's not necessarily, the traditional more partisan healthcare issue, which is hard to move. So I think there is space to get things done the rest of this year. Obviously, it'd have to kind of get cooked in May, June, July, and then Congress goes into August recess. They're out all of August, back in the state, back in their districts. They come back in September briefly, which is right now scheduled for 3 weeks, but I've heard rumors that might get shortened as well. And then they're out in October through the election. And then when they come back from the election, and a lot of this depends on how the elections go in November, and I won't get into the different machinations of who's going to be controlling what. You have a lot of different kind of ways it could play out depending on how the elections go. But at the very least, they're going to have to do an end of the year bill to kind of keep the government funded, keep all the 12 different federal agencies funded. So what you see is a big sort of omnibus bill, and that's where all the different healthcare provisions will get, and in addition to a lot of other provisions, get lobbed into, and it becomes a must-pass bill that Congress will pass, and by most I'd say strong percentage that they pass it by before Christmas, because either a Biden administration want to start a second term with a spending bill hanging over them, or a new administration on the Republican side won't want to start with a spending bill. So I think something does get done regardless. And it's interesting. I kind of go back to it's funny, you guys with the CCBHC issue. I go back a decade because that was when when I was working with the Sandy Hook folks and a broader mental health coalition on the Hill, Mental Health America, some of the APNs. And that was the big issue we were working on with Congress. And it was, as Abby mentioned at the beginning, it's you take these groups in, and unlike a lot of some of the other clients we have, members are very eager and excited to work with us because they know it's something that affects their constituents, and it's a bipartisan issue. So again, it's fun to be back kind of working on this issue with you guys. We're looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. So any questions for our federal lobbyist team? They shared a lot in this short time. I have one takeaway that I heard kind of throughout the three of you with all of this change, like we have done on a state level. It is very important on a federal level to stay in front of these folks locally. It makes our federal lobbyist team job and the site visits that we did last week so much more effective. And so staying on top of those relationships as they change. The letter wouldn't have been done if Beth did not have lunch with her representative there. And that local relationship is what drove that. And so that's a takeaway that I have with all of those changes. And so, John, it might just be helpful to get that written up real quick, just so people have those names and what districts and who's hanging out. But even in the primary, I don't think it's too soon to start developing relationships with those folks, especially those that we know are going to win. And so, having attention to that, I think, would be important for our members. So any other questions for our federal lobbyist team?
Zoe, just to jump on that real quick. Yeah, this is a great time because when to take, for example, somebody like a Mesmer down, or even a Jefferson Shreve, I mean, these are people that are not going to lose in November. And so they're really starting to they're trying to get a head start on their office or their time in Congress, and by developing relationships with people in the district and building that out. So this really is a great time to get to know your member of Congress.
Great. So we'll get a summary of that out to everyone to be able to make sure that you follow up. Bill, I also heard Mervyn, he was so great to meet with, and there could be some risks there, but those relationships, and Regional's done such a phenomenal job in that relationship building. So we'll keep doing those things. So just hang tight with me real quick. I do have just some quick things to share. Believe it or not, I thought with session that we could breathe a little, but it has actually, I think, been a little busier since session was over. This week, downtown in Indianapolis, our Indianapolis monument is lit in green, as well as the circle in honor of Mental Health Month. People ask me where the green came from. I do not know that answer. I need to find that answer, but it is green to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month, and we had a couple members as sponsors, as well as the Indiana Council, and did that in collaboration with Mental Health America of Indiana. We also have our open office hours coming up. And then I did want to highlight June 5th and 6th. So if this conversation ignited you to say, oh my gosh, I really want to do more, we have Hill Day. And I still need about 5 more folks to join. And the cool thing about who's coming to Hill Day is it's a lot of direct care, clinical CCBHC folks. So it's a little different than our visit last week. And so if you can join us, we will be meeting with all of our offices again to talk about things more broadly: CCBHC, workforce, block grant funding, 988, and Abby and John and Andrew will be joining us at certain parts for that during those days. Also, the day before that, on June 5th, is the Public Policy Institute, and I'm honored to be on a panel that day sharing about the benefits of long-term relationships with your legislators and how it's not just a session ask, but it's an everyday ask. And so come see me on that panel. I would love to have your support there. May 21st is the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Power of the Peers Recovery Through Connection. You can connect to that virtually on that link here. And then our guest on June 11th is someone that Beth paid forward, and that's Jessica from the Division of the Fatality Review and Prevention. And so I think that the work being done there is something that is worth highlighting to all of you. If you have not registered yet for the Mental Health Roundtable Summit, June 12th, that will be focused on youth. Several CMHCs will be represented there. We have a school-based panel that will be taking place, as well as the Behavioral Health Academy. And so please come and join us at the Hyatt. And then also June 17th and 18th, if you've not registered, the DMHA and HMA Indiana class workshop that will be taking place at Ivy Tech in Noblesville. And then do not forget our in-person meetings. Our last one in May was absolutely phenomenal. The engagement, the membership connection, the learning opportunities. You do not want to miss these on a quarterly basis. And that is our in-person meetings start on July 17th in our quarterly summer conference. It is focused primarily on youth, but there will be some topics that apply to all. And that will be July 18th, and that will be in beautiful Fort Wayne. So I wanted to highlight that for all of you. And then just a public policy update. As John highlighted, the primary did happen. I did send out that summary here in Indiana from an impact standpoint. What I want everyone to take away today is that we are working on a transition plan, regardless of who is there, so that our work with CCBHC is not stalled. The train has already left the station, and that transition plan will help keep that on the track. So we are working on that with our lobbyist team. And then if you have not completed our membership survey, your voice is the most important voice. It's what we as an Indiana Council team say, did we bring value to you every single day? This is that feedback. So please complete that. If you complete it within the next couple days, you'll be eligible for a $100 gift card. So who could use $100? We all probably can. So please complete that. Just another quick congratulations to those who were nominated and won our member awards in May. We will be doing, we did some press around that, and we will be sharing all of that great news. And so just wanted to congratulate all of our nominees. A reminder, we are still hiring for a quality assurance manager role, as well as the governor and state manager. If you know of anyone, and if you have not had a chance to get the in-class assessment out to clients for that project, they are still needing client feedback. I can't go away from this call because this is our federal lobbyist team. They know the importance of a PAC, and they know the importance of the Indiana Council PAC for Indiana. If you have not donated to that PAC, we are in a governor's race. So now is the time to be able to raise that and raise that for those who won the primary that we could help support. So last but not least, I have my Starbucks winner, and that, where'd she go on my screen? Oh, there you are, Jonda from Radiant. I'm like, I saw you. So you will be getting the $5 gift card. And unless there's not any other questions, we can raise our cups. And cheers to all of you. I just did it in 5 minutes over. So thank you, Federal Lobbyist team. And thank you to all of you. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.